them goodnight. Like she had some kind of a sense. I think she had a sense many times that he wasn't okay, you know? She would tell me that sometimes she would find him in his bathroom looking kind of out of it or holding on to it. And she also wrote these letters when she was little that we have kind of saying, I hope my daddy doesn't die. So there was some kind of.
What if I told you that for the past 4 decades, one entire floor of Graceland has been locked tighter than a vault, and no one, fans, historians, or even the most devoted Elvis disciples, has ever seen inside? Now that secret is about to be blown wide open. In today's episode, we hear from none other than Riley Keough, Elvis Presley's own granddaughter, as she finally lifts the curtain on the hidden rooms, sealed letters, and unheard recordings that have haunted the house's silent corridors. She'll reveal whether there really is a tunnel beneath the estate, if Elvis left behind unheard songs, and why one room remains exactly as it was the day the king died. Get ready for a revelation that could change everything we thought we knew about the man in the moon. This is V2, and it's the most intimate, jaw-dropping glimpse into the Presleys' private legacy yet. Stay tuned, because the truth is about to hit the airwaves. When the world first heard that the second floor of Graceland had been sealed, whispers swirled like the dust motes that drifted from the polished mahogany floors. Fans imagined secret rooms, hidden recordings, a shrine to a legend that had long since slipped into myth. For 4 decades, the upstairs remained a forbidden chapter in the story of one of music's greatest icons, locked behind a single hallway that no one had been allowed to step into. The tale begins not with the roar of stadiums or the gleam of gold records, but with a modest colonial revival house built in 1939 on a quiet plot in Memphis. It was a simple home with clean white columns, arched windows, and a dignified porch that echoed the quiet dignity of its original owner, a printing company magnate named S. Uliffe. In 1957, at the height of his early superstardom, Elvis Presley stepped into that house for a price of $12,500. More than a symbolic gesture than an investment, a place of refuge from the relentless glare of fame. Elvis was not content with a mere retreat. He saw in that house a canvas for his ever-evolving persona. He poured his restless energy into transforming Graceland into an extension of himself. Loud, colorful, and deeply personal. The Jungle Room, with its green shag carpeting that seemed to extend to the ceiling, and its carved wooden furnishings, became a living, breathing rainforest lounge that also served as a studio. Here, amidst the humid, verdant ambiance, he laid down some of the most intimate tracks of his career, including the Moody, Moody Blue. The meditation garden behind the house, constructed in 1964, offered a place of quiet reflection that would later become the resting place of the Presley family, from grandparents to grandchildren, and the quiet spot where global fans place flowers and notes in hushed reverence. Since its opening to the public in 1982, Graceland has welcomed over 20 million visitors. Tourists and pilgrims alike wander the corridors, clutching replicas of jumpsuits, peering into rooms that hold Elvis's awards and vintage cars. The estate stands as the second most visited home in the United States, surpassed only by the White House. Yet, amid the open tours, the second floor remained off-limits, a secret, a shrine, a private sanctuary. No one, not even the most devoted fans, had ever been granted access to the upstairs hallway. The rooms on that floor, Elvis's bedroom, the bathroom where he passed away, the closet holding his jumpsuits, were preserved exactly as they were on the day of his death. Family members, staff, and close friends were the only ones allowed past that threshold. It wasn't a matter of scandal, it was a matter of reverence. The rooms had become a time capsule, a place where the past seemed to stop moving forward. Growing up, Riley K. Presley, Elvis's granddaughter and Lisa Marie's daughter, was no stranger to the whispers that swirled around the house. She spent her childhood sneaking into the upstairs hallway as the public made their way through the lower levels. Her cousins would whisper, "Don't touch anything," while they watched the world frozen in time. For Riley, the second floor was not a mysterious shrine. It was a space that held her grandfather's private thoughts, fears, and dreams. She remembers with vivid detail the small, dark study that was lined with deep wood panels. Books on numerology, Christian theology, and Eastern mysticism were stacked on shelves. Among them were notebooks with Elvis's own reflections, journaled prayers, unfinished song lyrics, erratic scribbles, and a page that read only the word free in looping handwriting. The study was a portal into a man who, beneath the glittering public persona, wrestled with spirituality and loneliness. Riley's recollection of Elvis's bedroom paints a picture of a sanctuary that felt almost alive. The silk sheets draped the bed as if they still carried the scent of his presence. Two nightstands flanked the bed. One held a Bible with handwritten annotations, the other bore bottles of pain medication, some still full. Beneath the bed, a shoebox labeled "Do Not Open" contained unsent letters, one addressed to Lisa Marie, another simply reading, "To whoever finds this after I'm gone." These artifacts, deeply personal, were artifacts that shaped Riley's perception of her grandfather. They revealed not only the man's fame, but also his vulnerability, his attempts at finding solace in faith, and his longing for connection. The bathroom, where Elvis's life ended, was also preserved in its original state. Riley refuses to disclose every detail out of respect for the sanctity of that space, but she affirms that it remains untouched. Towels still the same, tiles still worn, the scent of old antiseptic lingering like a memory. Elvis's father, Vernon Presley, had personally insisted that the upper level remain sealed after Elvis's death on August 16, 1977. He did not see it as a publicity stunt, but as a private sanctuary for the family, a place to keep the memory of his son intact. The lock on the hallway door has never been removed, and the clock above Elvis's bed remains fixed at the time when paramedics first arrived. In these details, the family finds a way to keep the man who once filled the world with music still present, still felt. Now, for the first time, Riley K. Presley, the current steward of the estate, chooses to share her story. She has decided to speak openly about the upstairs, not to sensationalize, but to reveal the depth of a personal, intimate space that has for so long been shrouded in mystery. The revelations are not simply about hidden rooms or secret recordings. They are about memory, reverence, and the quiet truth that sometimes the most powerful stories are those that remain hidden. They show how a man's personal sanctuary can become a family sanctuary, how the act of keeping a space intact can serve as a bridge between the past and the present. In speaking about the second floor, Riley offers the world a chance to understand a side of Elvis that few have seen, a side that is raw, unfiltered, and deeply human. The upstairs, once a private sanctuary, now becomes a place of shared understanding, of connecting with the man behind the legend. It is a reminder that even the most celebrated lives are built upon personal rooms, private thoughts, and the quiet places where memories linger, waiting to be honored.
It was only her and her dad, so I think she got a lot of intimate time up there with him. No one else was up there.
Riley's eyes lingered on the hallway's end, the faint glow from a single recessed light that seemed to hold the air of a private chapel. She described that tucked-away alcove, the quiet room, as a place that had never made it into any official biographies or glossy magazine spreads. It was a sanctuary of her grandfather's quiet desperation and unfiltered longing. Low lighting filtered through lace curtains, casting delicate shadows across floor-covered cushions that were stacked like small patient islands. An old sound machine hummed a low, almost imperceptible tone, one that seemed to echo the rhythm of his heartbeat, a steady, comforting counterpoint to the world's relentless noise. Elvis had designed this space himself, a secret meditation room that allowed him to detach from the glare of fame and the relentless paparazzi. Riley recalls that he would often sit in silence for hours, sometimes with a Bible in one hand, a cup of coffee in the other, as he pondered his next steps, his next song, his next moment of quiet. This small, private retreat was an honest part of him, a place where the king of rock and roll could simply be a man, without the glitter and the crowds. Until now, no photographs had surfaced, no fan accounts mentioned it, and even the estate's own documents never mentioned its existence. The revelation was as significant as it was intimate, opening a window into a side of Elvis that most only dreamed of. The upstairs of Graceland has always been a place of reverence, a mausoleum of memories sealed with the same gravity it would carry if it were a tomb. Riley explains that the house was not a mere venue for public spectacle. It was a sanctuary for a family grieving an untimely loss. The room was a place where Elvis would lock himself away from the outside pressures, to read, meditate, or simply sit in quiet solitude. It was a place where the family found a way to keep the man alive, his presence, his memory, his spirit, by protecting it from the relentless gaze of the world. The decision to share this hidden sanctuary came after a profound personal loss. Lisa Marie had kept that part of the house protected, too painful, too sacred, too unresolved to be open to the public. Her death left Riley with a new role, a dual responsibility as owner of Graceland and as the voice of the family's legacy. She felt it was time to reveal parts of the story that had never been told, not for spectacle, but for understanding, not to exploit, but to connect. She made it clear that the upstairs would remain closed to the public. These revelations were meant to give fans a deeper emotional connection to Elvis, not to grant them physical access to the rooms. Yet, the rumors that have clung to Graceland for decades still swirl. The idea that Elvis may have faked his death and vanished through a hidden tunnel beneath the estate has always seemed like a plot from a thriller novel. Yet to thousands of fans, it remains a plausible narrative. The speculation is fueled by the unusual details surrounding his final days, the extreme privacy he sought, and the architecture of the estate itself. Some assert that a secret passage might have existed, leading from the main house to the rear of the property or even beyond, providing an escape route for a man overwhelmed by fame. Others dismiss it outright, citing the absence of any mention in public blueprints or any definitive evidence. Theories have surfaced over the years. A freelance journalist in 1989 claimed to have seen a faint staircase, an older photograph from the 1980s depicting a dim hallway, an alleged DNA sample presented by supposed heirs. Each piece of evidence is shrouded in ambiguity, with blurry photos and anecdotal accounts that have often been retracted or softened over time. The misspelling of Elvis's name on the grave, an unintentional correction or a deliberate act, only adds to the mystery. The silence of the upstairs, the sealed rooms, have created a vacuum that invites imagination. People fill that void with stories, with guesses, with the hope that the king may have left the stage on his own terms, quietly and in peace. Riley's approach to these rumors is cautious. She recognizes that part of Elvis's enduring power is the mystery that surrounds him. She has repeatedly said that her role is not to explain or confirm these tales, but to protect what mattered most to him. Whether there was a tunnel or not, whether Elvis's sightings were mistaken identities, or whether the legal documents on the grave are merely clerical errors remains unanswered. In the end, for a man who lived his life before a massive audience, keeping a part of himself hidden was perhaps the ultimate rebellion. The estate's legal structure is another layer in the labyrinth of Elvis's legacy. The Presley estate is not only valuable, it is protected by intricate legal frameworks that make it difficult to contest. Priscilla Presley's ongoing legal battle adds another dimension, highlighting the complexities of who controls the king's empire today. Riley's revelations about the quiet room, the upstairs, and the family's intent to protect the emotional and emotional legacy reinforce the idea that some aspects of a legacy should remain unanswered. The mystery, the unfinished stories, the hidden chambers, all contribute to the enduring allure of Elvis. The final lesson that Riley offers is simple yet profound. For a man who spent his life in front of the world, the act of keeping one part of himself hidden was perhaps the most rebellious act of all, preserving a piece of the king for those who would one day remember him, not just as a legend, but as a human being. She sits in a modest office on the first floor, surrounded by framed photographs of Elvis in various moods, his smile bright, his eyes a window into a turbulent soul. The room itself feels less like a vault and more like a living archive. The walls are lined with shelves that hold leather-bound notebooks, handwritten lyric sheets, and the occasional battered cassette tape. Riley's fingers trace the worn edges of a stack of loose-leaf pages. Each leaf is a reminder that this house is not simply a mausoleum. It is a living, breathing document of a life lived under a spotlight. The legal papers on her desk are equally dense. After Lisa Marie's death in 2023, the transfer of the estate to Riley did not settle quietly. Priscilla Presley, the mother of Lisa Marie and the former wife of Elvis, contested a 2016 amendment to the trust that had redefined the distribution of assets. The dispute was ultimately settled out of court, but it was a stark reminder that the Presley legacy is a battleground of contracts, intellectual property, and familial rights. The trust itself is a multi-layered structure that manages everything from the valuation of the land to the licensing of Elvis's image and recordings. To anyone claiming to be a descendant, the bar is set high. They must prove their lineage with DNA that is not only convincing, but also passes through an unbroken chain of custody. In most cases, the evidence presented, be it a hair sample from a supposedly auctioned lock of Elvis's hair, or a mysterious tape found in an upstairs study, fails under the scrutiny of forensic analysis. These claims usually collapse before reaching the courtroom, yet they persist in the gossip columns and online forums, feeding the myth that Elvis's lineage might be broader than the public record shows. Within this legal framework, Riley's role is paradoxical. She is a blood relative, yet she is also a gatekeeper of a cultural icon whose influence extends beyond music into American identity itself. Her hands are on the future of the estate, but her heart leans toward a different legacy, one that humanizes rather than hypes.
Even though he was a flawed human being, idol to millions, but a flawed human being nonetheless. But in her eyes, her dad was a god. And just to hear that she even felt that he might.
When she describes Graceland as a living space rather than a museum, she is not simply making a platitudinous statement. She is asserting that the place must breathe. The upstairs rooms, sealed off from public view, are not simply relics to be displayed. They are, to her, frozen in time, silos of moments that cannot be easily translated into an exhibit without losing their essence. She has explicitly denied requests to film inside private family spaces, even as rumors swirl about secret recordings and hidden tunnels beneath the estate. These denials are not rooted in fear of public backlash, but in a deliberate choice to preserve the sanctity of the private life that once existed in those rooms. The unreleased recordings are perhaps the most tantalizing thread of this tapestry. In the spring of 1976, Elvis conducted what are known as his final studio sessions inside the Jungle Room, a space that, like the rest of the estate, exudes an almost palpable intimacy. The tracks, Way Down, Moody Blue, and Gospel covers capture an artist in a raw, experimental phase. RCA released some of this material after his death, but not all. Many recordings were left incomplete, their tapes stored in the estate's private vaults. Bootleggers have long claimed to possess tapes that include unreleased tracks, but the authenticity of these copies has been contested. A notorious 1990s bootleg that supposedly featured a ballad titled "This Is Goodbye" was later shown to contain an impersonator's voice. Yet the very act of bootlegging underscores the public's hunger for these lost pieces. In her stewardship, Riley has prioritized digital preservation over exploitation. She is collaborating with archivists to scan and catalog every document, book, and tape that has yet to be cataloged. The process is painstaking. Every tape must be inspected, labeled, and digitized in a way that respects its provenance. One former estate employee, speaking only through an online fan forum, revealed that a reel-to-reel tape player and an unlabeled stack of tapes were found in Elvis's upstairs study. While the estate has not confirmed this discovery, the story aligns with known facts about Elvis's penchant for home recordings. These tapes were often personal, rough drafts meant for internal review or to share with close collaborators. They were not intended for public consumption, and perhaps that was a deliberate boundary Elvis himself established. Felton Jarvis, Elvis's producer, once remarked that the singer recorded far more material than the label ever released. Late-night tapes, piano sessions, and spontaneous vocal experiments sat off the radar of RCA because Elvis preferred to keep them private. Whether those tapes still exist, perhaps boxed in an upstairs cabinet, is a question that remains unanswered. Riley has hinted at personal artifacts that have yet to be cataloged. She feels a deep intuition that connects her to the spaces she now protects. Archivists attest that the contents of certain storage areas, particularly in Elvis's bedroom and study, have not yet been fully digitized. These uncharted pockets of history are the very reason Riley maintains their secrecy. They are not artifacts to be sold, but memories to be honored. Her vision for Graceland extends beyond the preservation of music. It includes the careful curation of the estate's intellectual property, a trust that must navigate the shifting landscapes of licensing, rights management, and family dynamics. Riley's approach is to let history speak for itself, rather than to force it into the modern marketplace. She sees the estate as a narrative, one that requires patience and reverence. Every night, as the house falls into quiet, Riley often walks the hallways, the scent of old wood and lingering perfume guiding her steps. In the dim light, the house feels like a living organism, its heart beating in sync with the legacy it holds. She knows that the myth of the secret tunnel, the whispered rumors of hidden heirs, and the hunger for unreleased recordings will never fully disappear. Yet, she chooses to focus on what is tangible, what is real, and what can be shared responsibly. She believes that preserving the integrity of the private spaces, digitizing the untold stories, and ensuring that the estate remains a living space will ultimately honor Elvis's complex humanity more than any posthumous release or sensational revelation could. The walls of Graceland, with their weathered trim and faded paint, seem to pulse with the echo of his early recordings, each creak a reminder of the countless nights he spent alone with a guitar, a microphone, and a restless imagination. In those moments, the house was less a museum and more a laboratory of raw emotion. The day's work often begins before the sun rises. Riley arrives at the estate with a small, battered notebook and a steady, measured breathing. Her first task is to cross-check the inventory of the attic, where the archivists have cataloged thousands of items, yet a few corners still whisper their secrets. The attic holds a stack of unlabeled reels, a dusty box of handwritten notes, and a rusted reel-to-reel player that seems to have been forgotten in the back of a closet. The player, its metal surface scoured by decades of neglect, still hums faintly when pressed against the ear, a phantom of the music it once held. She brings the player to the restoration workshop, where a quiet group of technicians work in the glow of dim lamps. Together, they coax the reels to life, their eyes flicking between the worn tape and the digital readout that slowly transforms analog hiss into crisp waveforms. Every successful playback feels like a small victory over time, a promise that the artist's voice will not fade into silence. As the tape feeds, Riley watches the waveforms scroll across the monitor, noting the subtle crescendos, the quiet breaths between verses. Each piece is then labeled with a meticulous description, assigned a unique identifier, and uploaded into a secure database. The database, in turn, links to a family of metadata that captures the location of the recording, the approximate date, and any context that might illuminate its significance. Even as the digitization proceeds, the estate must navigate a labyrinth of rights and legacy. The legal team, led by a quiet, methodical lawyer who respects the family's wishes as fiercely as the archivists respect the material, reviews each file's provenance. When the legal team identifies a track that might be suitable for public release, they assess whether the estate's policy, guarding the authenticity and integrity of the recordings, permits such a step. The policy, drafted by Riley herself, is clear. Only those works that align with Elvis's own intent for public sharing may be released, and only after thorough examination of his wishes and the wishes of his immediate family. Yet not all questions find answers in the present. The rumor of a secret tunnel that once led from the study to a nearby garden remains a lingering whisper among the staff and fans alike. Riley knows that the tunnel, if it exists, could hold artifacts, letters, or even more tapes that the artist never intended for the public. The family's instinct to protect such secrets clashes with the public's insatiable curiosity. Instead of giving in to the demands of speculation, Riley chooses to focus on what is visible and defensible. She explains that the house, as much as a repository, is also a place of memory, a place where the family can walk through their history without being overwhelmed by the press or by the market forces that threaten to commodify a living legend.